My concern is, according to this, there's 16 people waiting for the stream to start, according to YouTube.
All right, wait, maybe this will work.
My concern is, according to this, there's 16 people waiting for the stream to start.
There we go. Okay, I am so sorry, everybody.
There we go.
We've got it. All right, so welcome everyone to the Board of Education meeting of January 21st, 2021. Just for everybody who hasn't figured it out yet, this meeting is being recorded and is virtual. We just ask that all participants mute themselves to prevent meeting interference and that you unmute using the *6. I also ask that everybody wait to be recognized by the chair before speaking so that people listening by the phone are able to identify who it is that's talking. All right, and so we will begin with our Pledge of Allegiance, and I will pull up the flag so that we can say the pledge if you'll join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. All right, so that brings us to the action on our executive session. So I will entertain a motion.
I move that the Board of Education appoint Dennis Kolko, I hope I'm saying that right, Dennis, as Director of Technology effective on or about February 22nd, 2021.
Second.
So Mr. D'Elia makes the motion and Mr. Cruson seconds it, with Mr. Voros also noting his wanting to be in on that. So would anybody like to speak to that motion?
I'll speak to my motion quickly.
Yes,
And
Mr.
then I'll turn it over to Dr. Rodriguez, I think. I just wanted to say I'm fully in support of hiring. I'm going to call you Dennis. I'm sorry, because I feel like I'm making a mess of your last name. Dennis, I asked, there were a number of questions asked in executive session, very impressive answers. Some of them I had no idea what he was saying because it was way beyond my scope of knowledge, which I found very impressive. So I'm fully in support of hiring Dennis. I'm looking forward to having Dennis's expertise help us serve the children of Newtown in years to come. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then Dr. Rodriguez, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to, I'll follow that by saying we're all pleased to have Dennis joining our team, and I want to thank the members of the committee and all of those who, Al Miles from the town, who also participated in the second interview. And again, Dennis rose to the top out of our finalists for his passion and his energy and his knowledge. So we are really excited to have you join Newtown Public Schools. So welcome.
Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting all of you, and I look forward to getting to know you all more.
All right. So we still have the motion on the table. Is there anybody who would like to speak further to the motion? All right, sensing none, we'll take a vote then. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And I'm trying to see, let's see. Okay, we've got everybody. It's unanimous. Any opposed? None. So, all right, it's unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. Kolklaw. We're very pleased to have you with us. Yes, the virtual applause. Yeah, I'm very impressed. This is my first time meeting you, and I'm very pleased and looking forward to having you join the district. And thank you very much for traveling all the way here this evening. And I don't know if you wanted to say a few words.
I'm just really excited about the opportunity. I enjoyed the process that you all put together for this role. I thought it was well thought out and very well executed in the weird time that we're in with video conferences and whatnot. I truly appreciate interview committees that have not just the educational staff, but as well as the support staff. I really thought having Al on the committee was a huge value. It gives me an opportunity to sort of understand the culture of Newtown and how it's set up. So spot on the process, which as I was going through the process, I became more and more excited about it because of the way that you all have put together the process. So I thought it was very well done, and it gives me as the interviewee a really good understanding of sort of a core foundation of what Newtown is, and I'm excited to be a part of that.
Great. Just wait until you can meet us all in person, and that'll be even better.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you and congratulations.
Thank you all.
You're, of course, welcome to stick around for the rest of our board meeting. We'll be talking about budget. It's that time of year, but of course, you're welcome to leave as well. So thank you, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Right. Bye, everybody.
All right. So that brings us to our special education budget. And so Deb Peterson is here. I see we have Maureen Hall. I'm trying to see. And Sonia Raquel is here. So would you like to start us off, Deb?
Sure.
Ms. Peterson?
Yeah, that's fine. So, hi, everybody. Nice to see
Hello.
you again. Before I begin with my budget, I just really would like to take and have this opportunity to just say how amazing my staff is. It cannot go unsaid. Since March, how they really rose to the challenge. Those that were very scared of technology to those that are very proficient in technology. They reached out, they asked for help, others helped their peers. They really have done an amazing job. Everyone from our special ed teachers, our paraprofessionals, BTs, related service staff, our nurses, the supervisors, everyone's been amazing. So I really think it should just not go unsaid how lucky I am to have such an amazing staff. Specifically to Anne and Frank, who truly for the first time when reaching out to the teachers and putting together, working on the technology and putting together schedules, really took into account the special education department, which has never been done before, and the teachers really appreciate it. So thanks to all of them, and I will start with my budget. I did share 2 slides with Michelle. I think she's going to present those and I can speak to them. Every year, for those of you that have been on the board, I do share the enrollment charts and the percentage. So I'm going to start with the district special education enrollment the last 5 years, as you can see up there. So the red indicates for, okay, so you can see the years. When you look at 2020-21, that was our October 1 reporting to the state of Connecticut. We were at 607 students, and the 18 in red are the students that were withdrawn from school to be homeschooled by their parents, and the parents have indicated that they will be returning once school returns to some normalcy and they feel it's safe. Fast forward to January 15th, which actually this date should have changed, and I apologize, that's actually today's date. I did have an update for January 15th. As of Friday, we actually had 636 special education students. However, today we are now at 642, with 20 students that have been pulled for homeschooling until next year, which we have been told they will return. So we will obviously be up to 662 students approximately. As you can see, our number has literally changes almost daily, if not weekly. We have seen since October 1, at least 2 to 3 students being added either moving into district or, qualifying for services. They were potentially in the referral process, our own students, and they qualified. I do think it's important to note that as of today, we have had 38 new students move into district with special education needs. That is one of the highest that we have had of new families moving into district with students that are in special education already. So if for the next slide, this is, as I did last year, I showed the projection of the last 4 or 5 years of the percentage. So the state percentage for special education and the district percentage and how we match up. So last year for 1920, the state was at 15.6%, as you could see, and we were at 14.5. For this year, as of Friday, we're at 15.6%. So we caught up to the state from last year. However, we don't have the state's prevalence rate yet, only because they don't give that out until February, and we're really not, they do ask that we don't share that information when we receive it until later on in the spring. It really is just for our information. I anticipate that the state's percentage will obviously be higher than 15.6%. I do meet with my colleagues in neighboring towns every other Monday to discuss what's going on in special education in all our towns, and we're all facing the same enrollment increase, even though district-wide our enrollment is not really catching up as fast as the special education is growing. So any questions on those charts before I get into my budget? I can't see.
I can't see. Is there any board member questions? Doesn't look like it.
Okay. I mean, I think it speaks for itself.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed.
Hi.
Mr. Dalia has.
Deb, I have a question. I don't know if it's relevant to those charts, but would you mind giving me like the Reader's Digest version explaining the law that's spelled out on that first page about how we're not allowed to reduce dollars, and is that?
Oh, on the first page in the book?
Yeah, I'm that, just so that everybody, maybe, I just think it would be nice if you explain that quick. I'm not looking for a long explanation, but I think that ties to how you plan your budget, I believe.
Right. So under the IDEA, we're given money, the IDEA grant. Every district is given money. It's the federal grant, and the money that you receive for that school year, you cannot reduce that at all for the next year. So you have to use those funds. However, it's used in, that goes into things such as staffing, professional development, however you allocate it. But the next year, you cannot spend less on special education that you spent the year before. And that's just through the federal IDEA grant.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Sorry to be late with my question.
No worries. Okay, go on. Okay, so this year, as I know that you're already aware of, I have asked for 2 special education teachers at Newtown Middle School. That is for a few reasons. It goes with the new schedule that was proposed and accepted by the board to have a special education teacher attached to each cluster to provide co-teaching, to implement co-teaching at the middle school, which is something new. They haven't had that in a very long time. And that would also provide some consistency as those students move up to the high school, because we are co-teaching at the high school. So we're trying to have the same model at the middle school. So we are very excited about that. The middle school has predominantly always had some higher caseloads. The teachers have had higher caseloads at the middle school for some reason. So this will also offset that as well and provide students with the opportunity to be in their gen ed classes with the special education teacher, as opposed to having some pull-out services to receive the services that are indicated on their IEP. I've also asked for a teacher at Middlegate, a special education at Middlegate, a special education teacher at Middlegate. Their numbers are, for some reason, they seem to be the school this year that has received many of either the new enrollments or students that have qualified through the referral process. And just to give you an idea, Middlegate on October 5th, when I've been taking data on the schools throughout the year, Middlegate had 47 identified, they had 53 identified students in their building. When I did when I looked at it today, Middlegate has 63, and they currently have 11 students in the referral process who are being evaluated to see if they qualify. So for some reason, Middlegate is a school this year. The teachers over there, we do have the PAL program. Our teacher, Lola, she does an amazing job with those students. You know, she also carries a higher caseload for the students that she services. And then our other two teachers, Chelsea and Sabrina, they are currently at 20 and 21 students on their caseloads. So add in those 11 students, and it's only January. So I anticipate those going up even more. So we have asked for another teacher at Middlegate for next year to help, help with those services and to keep those groupings that they put together at a reasonable level so that the students can get the maximum out of their services. And then, hold on, I just have to find my other paper. So the last thing I have put in my budget is in addition to our ESY summer program. So this year, as you know, we did have ESY in person, and the way that we had to do it this year, to follow the guidance from the CDC, was to have our 7th through 12th graders at the high school and our kindergarten through 6th grade at Sandy Hook. Typically, we always have ESY at Sandy Hook pre-K to 12. So splitting it this year was pretty eye-opening. It worked out very well, but it was eye-opening. It made us realize that those students that are in grade 7th and 8th grade, it was very helpful for them to be at a high school as opposed to an elementary school. It provided some early transition for them as they would move to the high school. We always find that there's a lot of anxiety for students and parents when the students are moving from middle school to high school. So we felt that if we want to try to keep that model for this summer coming up. So we would bring in our preschool this summer, which we didn't last year due to COVID and not being able to maintain the safety guidelines. But this year we would have pre-K through 6 at Sandy Hook and 7 through 12 at the high school. And to do that, I would need to have one of my supervisors at the high school to oversee. So I would have a supervisor, and Kim was also there in the summer, which helped. And then at Sandy Hook, myself and another supervisor have always been at Sandy Hook, also, running the buses, doing the attendance, calling the parents, working with the nurse, working with the teachers. And this year, obviously, with our enrollment going up, we anticipate roughly 150 students for ESY. That can change depending on where we're at by June with our students. So that is something that I also put into my budget, was the additional supervisor for the 16 days of summer school. And we continue with our transition program, NCP program. They actually have been in full all year. We still have other districts that are reaching out to us to have their students attend our program. We are still moving forward with that. So we often have meetings with other districts to describe our program and see if the student is appropriate to attend. And then in the budget, you will see, I know Dr. Rodrigue had this in her presentation, one of the larger technology apps that we put in the budget for next year was for our speech pathologists. I I forget what it's called. What was it called? Sonia, do you recall? The speech app? Anyway, they started using it last year. It was free. A lot of the apps last year were free. So the speech pathologist had asked, and as well as some of our school psychologists who work with the students, or social workers, because it works on not only speech, but the social aspect that many of the students have in their IEPs. We did put it in the budget because they work really hard on understanding it and using it, and they found it's very applicable to use in their groups. And the students did really well with it. So for our students that are on cohort D, only participating remotely, the apps that the staff are using this year have been really helpful in helping the students meet their goals and objectives with success. And that's all I have. I'll take questions. I'm sure that there are questions.
Great, thank you. And I just want to note, I see Paula Grayson here too. I think I missed your square in the grid that we have here. So, so do we have any board member questions? Yes, Ms. Lideline.
I'm just wondering if there's any word from the state for this year as to the excess cost grant reimbursement rate. Have they, I know they decide in February, but are there any rumors or discussions going on, and especially with such a crazy year?
Yeah, I have not heard anything. So no, I have not heard much from the state.
All right, thank you.
That is one of CABE's priorities, is to advocate for fully funding the excess cost grant, because it's currently not even fully funded.
Right, which was the intent of the excess cost grant.
Right.
And that is in the CAPS recommendations that I sent all of you as board members. If you recall, that is one of the recommendations CAPS is making to the state.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 12 years and I don't ever remember it being fully funded, so.
I know.
All right, any other board member questions? I have a question. Oh, Mr. D'Elia.
When I was looking through the budget, I was just wondering, why is there no increase for training or professional development? If you're adding staff members, I'm just curious if there is a need for additional training, and I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that, Deb.
So, that's a really great question. Typically what happens is, the staff will come to me when they have found a training of some sort that they would like to go to. And I have found year after year, even with providing the funds for those teachers to get certified in Wilson reading, that we have had enough funds in our budget to allow for that. So we have one other teacher that has just come forward that really wants that Wilson certification. We have the funds for it. It's, last year, obviously there wasn't as much professional development with everyone home. And honestly, up until this point, I really haven't had anyone reach out asking for that. So I think we're in a good place, but I typically don't deny anybody the professional development. And it's really going to depend on the teachers that we hire and, what their job is going to be. If they need specialized training in any specific special education area.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Dukowski.
This is more just an informational question. So you have 2 online packages in your budget, but some of the other online packages that are used throughout the general education are in the curriculum budget. So is it that your budget basically is a completely self-standing, all of the equipment you need, all of the paraphernalia you need, all of the software you need, is all within this budget?
Yes, it is. The everyday speech is the one that I was referring to before. And that solely is used by, my staff. So that's in my budget. Our staff have the technology. We have the funds for any of our students that need something other than a Chromebook. You know, typically a lot of our students will have iPads, and we've never run into an issue with being able to provide that. We also, I believe this was funded though through the COVID relief grant. We did move some of our staff to digital evaluations. So we were able to purchase all the iPads that were required for that for the staff that agreed to pilot it. And they're doing that, you know, they're doing that this year, they're piloting it. And our hope is to get the whole district in the next year or two to all digital evaluations.
And so you're paying for devices as well, right through your budget and not through the technology budget?
Correct.
Okay.
For our special education students and staff, it goes through my
Okay.
budget.
Thank you very much.
I have a follow-up question on that. In terms of these apps or programs, they've been useful during this period when we have a lot of distant learning going on. Will they be as useful if we are full in person?
Yeah, and that was really the conversation I had with the staff specifically for that everyday speech, which is I think approximately $12,000 for the year because you do purchase it per license. The conversation really was, will this be useful when you're in school? And they have all stated that it's very useful distance and in person.
Okay.
And they have given me you know, some ideas of what they do with them, with the students, to show that they can use it in any environment. And that's why I agreed to purchase it.
All right. Any other questions? Yes. Let's see, Ms. Zukowski, and then Ms. Delia.
Mr. Delia is ahead of me. Okay, then I'll go. A question, you've got the contingency also listed in your budget, and the contingency is listed for 100,000. In the goal, it said that there would be a special education contingency that was the 5-year average. And from what I remember, our 5-year average in deficit support of the special ed was around $400,000, not 100,000. So the question is, are we going to stay this year with the 100,000, or are we going to, you know, move it to the 300,000, or to the 400,000 rather?
So that's really a question for you as a board. Because that's how it began, with the board proposing that.
Okay. So
Maybe
that
a
was,
question to Ms. Vadas is that, do we have the previous 5-year average? Is it 400,000? Is that?
I do have the average, and it's roughly about 300,000. I guess that was put in place, what, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
And at the time, and I wasn't involved in the conversations, but from what I heard, it was supposed to offset the TBDs. I don't know if that's ever happened or not. I know we still have TBDs in the budget, but you know, it's been consistently 100,000 for the last couple of years. This year, you know, we look okay in that budget line, but that's all the history that I have on it. But it is roughly about 300,000 right now.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other, Ms. Harriman-Stites? Oh,
Just a kind of a comment on that question, but I'm happy to wait my turn if Mr. Delia has something.
no. What? Yeah, if this is on the same topic, then
It's on the same topic, so feel free. I'll jump in after you're done.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, you know, I know the history on the contingency. It was something that we worked really hard to put into place. I don't know if right now is the time to have the conversation about it. You know, obviously I would be open to increasing that. I think, you know, I don't think it was meant, are you saying it was meant to offset the to be determined? Is that what you mean by TBD? I'm not sure what that.
Yeah, the to be determined. We always include 2 or 3, about 2 students that?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't specifically for that. It was really, it was for costs that exceeded what we had budgeted, you know, in special education. It wasn't really even specific to any, you know, TBD budget line or students that we didn't know. It was just, our costs always exceed what we budgeted, and it was to plan for the future and then create kind of a cushion so that we could meet the needs of all of our students. I will say that that's the budget line that other boards like to try to cut right away, and we've had to fight to keep that contingency every year since we instituted it. So that being said, if we increased it, I'm sure it would raise a lot of concern with the other boards, but I would be in full support of that. And again, I don't know if now is the time to have that conversation, perhaps because it's not really, although it's a part of Ms. Peterson's budget, it's not really something that she has determined. It's something that the board has determined amongst ourselves.
Can I just revise my answer from before? The last 5-year average up to 1920 has been about $226,000.
Okay. Yeah, because we did have a couple of years there that were pretty significantly off, and I think we moved beyond that 5-year period now. Okay, so that's good to know. All right, Mr. D'Elia, I'm sorry, I forgot that I said you would be next, and then would you like to be next now?
I'm very upset. I'm just saying that out loud. Deb, this is a question possibly about future planning. If we add middle school special ed teachers like you propose, does that will that help kids exit special ed as they enter into high school? Will there be I'm just curious, and I'm not looking for a definitive answer. I guess that's my question, if that makes sense.
It does. I'm not really sure I can answer that. I don't specifically think that students would be exited from special education going into high school because of it. What I do see are students being more prepared for high school, gaining the skill set that they need to be successful in the classes that we have at the high school, potentially allowing us at the high school level to take another look at the types of classes that we are offering and how many we're offering to our special education students, given their new skill set. But again, with it going into effect next year, it is going to take a few years to see, you know, the change and how that affects our students. So, you know, of course, we always want to see our students exit because that means that they, you know, have really been provided appropriate instruction and they have the tools to soar on their own. But, you know, like I said, I can't say if students would actually be exited because we added the co-teaching model at the middle school.
Thank you.
And also, I think this was that Mr. Einhorn brought this up the other night as well. By adding the special education teachers to the clusters and the new schedule, it also does allow our special education students the opportunity to take a language, to not miss their unified arts classes. You know, up until this year, the students really and the parents together have to make a decision as to are they going to give up the language? Are they going to give up an art class or, you know, technology class, depending on what their IEP reads? So I really feel it just really helps all of our students be well-rounded and no one has to give anything up.
Again, thank you, Deb. I appreciate the answer.
Okay, any other questions? Then maybe we can, oh, Debbie Ledline, yes.
Sorry, just a quick question. This is more for Tanya. Have we used, or how much have we used of the current contingency budget for this year's costs?
The current contingency we haven't touched yet. We haven't used anything. You know, in the past that's been applied when the accounts run into the red. We haven't seen that happen yet this year because it's such an unusual year, but so no, it hasn't been applied yet. Yeah, I think
Yeah, I'll leave that for a later discussion. So any other questions? Or comments? So we'll move on to pupil personnel budget. And Ms. Peterson, you're back.
Yes, I'm
Back
back.
to this discussion.
So we don't really have any additions to our pupil personnel staffing. I know that we've had some grants that have sunsetted, and I know that Dr. Rodriguez also pointed that out in her presentation, that we are awaiting on to hear from Novo and, and another grant. Unfortunately, we won't hear about that until the spring, later in the spring or near the end of the year. So, but I understand that there were some questions regarding, let's see, the sunsetting and Medicaid funds. So just to address that, for Medicaid funds, we don't receive a lot of money in regards to that. So it typically takes a few years to build up the money that we do receive to be able to fully fund a position, which we have been able to do in the past. We currently are now in the process of building that up again. So when you see that differential in the budget book regarding that, I can share that $22,366 of that social worker's salary was provided through the COVID relief fund. So the district ultimately is responsible for $28,638. And actually, I misspoke. It's not a social worker, it's a counselor. So this is in regards to 2 school psychologists that we have working remotely, 2 elementary school psychologists we have working remotely. We have brought in a school counselor to provide the in-school counseling services split between both schools. So that was a 1-year position for this year. That's why part of that salary was funded through the COVID relief grant. Does that make, I just want to, before I go on to the next, does that make sense? Is there any other question regarding that? No? Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure I answered it correctly for you. And then I know that there were other questions regarding nursing staff, and I know that Ann Dalton can speak to that, and that goes under the health services. But in regards to the pupil services, that really is the only addition that that is in there, and it really is due to staff working remotely from home.
Okay. Any questions from anybody? Yeah, Ms. Herman-Stites.
I guess I just, always have concerns about the emotional well-being of the students. I know you share those concerns with me. And I think specifically in this time when, things have changed so rapidly for students in the last year or so, going into 21-22, do you feel, and I probably ask this every year, but I think that this year, even more important, I just want to make sure that we do have the staff resources and the PT for the PD for the staff that we need to adequately support the students in the way that we're going to need to, given everything that they've been through these last, year. It's going to be.
Oh, I think she froze.
I think I froze.
Wondering if I froze.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you. You're just not moving.
Yeah, you froze a little bit.
Did you get most of my question?
I did. And
Okay, good.
I definitely hear your concerns. I would be remiss to say I don't have the same concerns about our students and what that's going to look like next year. I know just through this year and students finally getting back into school full time, we have seen a rise in students' anxieties, not wanting to attend school. We are, as I shared in I think a few board meetings back, we are contracting with outside resources to get people into students' homes to work with them, to get them to log on or get into school. I certainly don't know what next year will bring. Our numbers are going up. So I feel confident in the professional development that we can provide to staff. I don't know what that would look like at this time and what the needs will be of the staff and the students. But yeah, I have concerns about how our students' mental health and well-being will finish out the year and look like next year when we're hopefully, back to the way we should be. But it is something that I constantly talk to my supervisors about. We talk many times a day, always having that litmus test of, how are the students doing? How are the staff doing? What do we need? Where are we with, caseloads? Where are we with mental health? I know the SAIL program at the middle school, this was the first year. You guys were wonderful in allowing us to begin that at the middle school, and it is needed. I mean, we're up to 6 students already, which may not seem like a lot, in the big picture, but it is. And it's been wonderful to be able to get those 6 students in there that, weren't coming to school or refused to go within the building. The SAIL program at the high school is, for lack of better words, it's booming. I mean, they have a lot of students, and they're doing amazing things, but we are definitely seeing, those issues. And we'll just continue to, keep our finger on it and make sure that all the needs are met.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, well, let's see. We'll go to Ms. Zukowski and then Ms. Herman Stites again.
I'm going to move on to nursing. So if Ms. Harriman Stites has more on the counselors, I am happy to have her go first.
Oh, okay. Well, let's wait on nursing. Ms. Harriman Stites, did you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just want to, I know it's a difficult question to answer, and I know you all are so responsible about keeping a fiscally responsible and conservative budget while still meeting the needs of the students. But I really do want to know if there's specifically, an area you see that you could use more support in if you had the budget dollars to do it, I guess.
Well, I mean, certainly I feel like we have the staff to meet the needs of our students. If the budget was a la carte and we could have everything we wanted, certainly I would say, yeah, absolutely. Throw me a lot more money and I'd, make sure that every building had, double what they have. But do I think that what we have is not enough? No, I think what we have is enough. But like you said, it's hard to determine what next year is going to bring. Right now, I feel we're in a good position. And, I will go from there. If, and Dr. Rodriguez, is very aware. I would certainly make a beeline to her office when I have needs, and I will give her a heads up if I think something's bubbling over. And she's always very supportive. So I really don't have a concern that if a need absolutely arises, that she will be supportive of it. She always is. So right now we are in a good position.
And I guess that just kind of underscores the need for the contingency dollars as well, because it would be nice to be able to put everything into the budget now in case a need arises. And I guess that's why I was asking, but, since we don't know what next year is going to bring, having that contingency fund available to meet those needs should they arise is really important. So
yeah, I would agree. And I just think it's important for me to share also with our outplacements. You hear a lot of different things, about how students are outplaced. And I think it's important to state that when the decision for an outplacement by the district is not taken lightly, we absolutely, and the staff can share the same, the supervisors can, share the same information. We really dig deep and get very creative to try to keep our students in district. When we have to place a student out of the district, it is not for lack of trying. We utilize all our resources. So I do think that's important because, those numbers do go up and down. We have been successful in bringing students back to district, but sometimes we've done everything we can, and we want to make sure that we do keep our staff safe, but also do what's in the best interest of the child. So I just think that's an important piece of the puzzle, because I know that, you know, those out of district tuitions and the TBDs that Tanya brought up, we just don't know, but we try our hardest to keep our students with us.
All right, very good. This is all good conversation. This is, you know, the one time a year that the Board of Ed gets to really have these conversations. So it's really good to hear that perspective from you and just have the conversation. All right. I know, Ms. Zukowski, you had a question about nursing, but I believe Ann Dalton will probably give us some information before we dive into questions there, if that's okay. All right. So, but before we do that, are there any other questions on pupil personnel services that we need to address before we move on? All right. I don't think so. So, Ms. Dalton, if you would give us some information on the health department,
The nursing department, yes,
yeah.
So I'd like to just start by thanking the board for your support during this really difficult year. I think the board's support has made possible, has given the nurses enough time, enough staffing to be able to step up to all the challenges that this year has presented. And we're very appreciative of that. And I also just want to express how proud I feel of the nurses, because they continue to do a great job, and they have taken on all of the challenges that the virus has presented in the schools. So just wanted to start with that. As far as the budget does not really reflect any large shifts. The extra staffing that we've had this year really wasn't in the nursing budget. That was, for the most part, you know, out of grant money. I believe I wasn't really involved in that discussion, but it wasn't in our budget. We have had this year, in order to manage the COVID virus, we have had extra staffing in our elementary schools. And that was put in place with the concern that if cases showed up in the middle of the day, we were going to need nurses to man the isolation room. So specifically in 3 of our elementary schools that have isolation rooms separate from the nursing office, there is extra nursing staff this year that has allowed us to do that. And then additionally, the nurses had extra time this year, which once again has allowed them to pick up the extra responsibilities involved with contact tracing and all of the documentation that goes along with that, as well as their other duties. So that has been very helpful. That's made it possible. In terms of the budget, there's a little note here that you'll see that where a nursing position moving to the high school next year from the middle school. And that just reflects the movement of one of our students who requires one-to-one nursing coverage, who will be moving up from 8th grade to 9th grade next year. And so that nurse is moving with her. So that's what that is. And beyond that, there are a few changes to the budget, little changes, but nothing remarkable.
All right.
Good
So,
questions.
yep, I think that Ms. Zukowski has a question.
Yeah, so I'm looking at on page 142, the current and then the requested, and it looks like the extra staff and the extra time are being carried forward for the 21-22 school year. And is that just to make sure that if COVID continues that we've got what we need, or am I just reading that wrong?
No, that doesn't reflect the extra. I don't believe that reflects the extra time that we had for COVID.
I can speak to that. If you remember in the last board report in November, we did transfer some money into the nurses' account to cover that additional hour for the nurses, but it wasn't all transferred. We couldn't cover all of it. So that's why you see the bump of $50,000, but that is for the additional hour that the nurses have been working. And they are doing it this year. And Ian was right, some of it was covered by the Corona Relief Grant. This year it cost about $110,000 and about $40,000 was covered through the grant.
I have a comment to make also about the 8-hour day, which is to say that, I mean, it certainly has been helpful this year, but in fact, the nurses have long worked more than a 7-hour day for a long, long time. They have worked more than a 7-hour day because it is absolutely necessary. You need to have a nurse in the office as children get off the bus, and you need a nurse in the office until all of those children have been dismissed and are home, basically. We have diabetics on our bus. We have kids with seizures on our buses. We have just a whole wide variety of reasons that nurses need to be in their offices before children arrive at school.
Well, that was the point of
add
the
that.
question, to be honest with you, because as a mother of a child with anaphylaxis, okay, which is another reason you would want to have a nurse there. So it's just a question of what the intent of the school is. Is the intent long-term to go to a full 8-hour days? And I would say that there is a good justification for that. It's just, it would be nice to know, you know, it said outright.
I can speak to that too, along with what Ann said. We moved this forward. And as Ann mentioned, I had been talking to the nurses union on this prior to COVID. And that was because we did have students with serious issues, and they were not bus to bus, you know, so it was becoming a hardship. Nurses were staying overtime even though they weren't getting paid. So it really kind of flipped, you know, on itself this year, where we had to offer this to the nurses for COVID, but it really wasn't about COVID. So we made an agreement that we would carry this forward, even though we haven't fully negotiated that, which comes up this year, which will happen before the budget. So.
All right. Any other questions? Yes, Mr. D'Elia.
First, I want to start off by saying, Ann, I'm a huge fan, and I just want to thank you and your staff for all you've done this year. It's incredibly, an incredibly stressful time, and I just want to thank you for that and tell you that, again, I'm a huge fan. Is there anything that you did not ask for that you might think you need in this budget?
It is hard for me to, I'm an optimist, and I am banking on this vaccine and that, you know, our lives are all going to return to normalcy by next fall, but there's no knowing that for sure. And so that's sort of my one area that I feel like a little uneasy, like if for some unforeseen reason this stretches into next year, we will continue to need additional help beyond what we, you know, normally have needed, which we have had. Thank you very much for that. But, you know, I'm not anticipating that next fall is going to be a continuation of that. So I think we're okay right now. I guess that's the answer. We're okay.
All right. Thank you very much. And again, thank you to you and your staff for all you're doing and all you've done. It's appreciated, and just thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? No, I'm sensing none. So thank you. And we'll move on to the Newtown High School budget.
Thank you. Dr. Cook, could you give me permission to share my screen, please?
Yes. That should do it, I think.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, is that working?
It is.
Okay, excellent. Well, first, good evening, and thank you for having me to present the Newtown High School 2021-2022 proposed budget. Like all of my colleagues that spoke on Tuesday, and Deb and Ann today, I first want to start by thanking my exceptional staff at Newtown High School. This has been an incredibly challenging year, and they have risen to the occasion. And there's a lot of moving pieces up here, and it takes every single person to make this ship sail. I would also be remiss without giving a huge shout out to our amazing nursing staff who walked into an impossible situation and somehow managed to navigate it perfectly. So Anne and the rest of your staff, from all of us at the high school, thank you so much. So we'll begin tonight with a little NHS spotlight. Although there's been a lot of successful events and programs at NHS, the full implementation of the Capstone Project takes the cake for this year. As of tomorrow, we'll have completed 162 successful presentations. As Mr. Voros explained and Mr. D'Elia agreed, these are truly student passion projects. Over the summer, some of our rising seniors reached out advocating to not have to complete the project because of the pandemic situation, but I held strong and I knew the potential and value. After many of the projects I graded, I would ask, did you enjoy this process and are you thankful you did it? Not once did I receive a no for an answer. And now I have students thinking ahead and meeting with me about possible capstone ideas for the future. They're excited and really putting their 12 years of education into action. I saw projects where students collected soccer equipment to donate to children in Ghana. I saw students build computers from scratch. I saw newly developed and coded video games. I saw students design and make clothing. I heard from students who wrote screenplays, those who investigated leadership opportunities, and those who spent countless hours with a physical therapist. I saw a student passionate about saving the environment and a student who created a manual about law enforcement careers to donate to our own career center for future students. And that's just a small sample of the products that our students have produced. Let me go ahead and connect the dots for you as to what this has to do with our budget. Sure, there's a line item that allows us to pay for teachers to review proposals, grade final presentations, and create a uniform curriculum. But the important tie is how we've created a senior capstone class. Currently, we have 10 teachers from a variety of departments who take capstone as a part of their full-time equivalent. Not only has this benefited our students who have dedicated time with a teacher who is trained in this process, but it's also allowed us to keep staff while our enrollment has decreased. Capstone has truly been a blessing to the entire NHS community, and I cannot wait to see the 226 remaining projects that will come forward this spring. Now on to the meat of our proposed budget. The main drivers this year include the needs of NHS based on the district and strategic plans and state mandates. As always, we want to ensure that all programs have adequate resources and maintain a high level of instruction. This year, more than ever, we want to ensure all the necessary technology and platforms are accessible to all of our students and teachers. Although the scheduling process is very complex at the high school and exact numbers are not known until student course requests are complete, we want to make sure that class sizes across all disciplines are reasonable and maintained. We'll discuss more on an upcoming slide. Finally, our budget is reflective of natural increases through certified and non-certified contracts, transportation, and insurance. I've briefly highlighted the major reductions and additions to this year's budget. Our certified reductions include 1 full-time social studies teacher, 0.8 from the science department, and 0.5 from the technology education department. We always try to keep our staff intact, particularly after a challenging year like this. So it's important to note that these reductions are through retirements or teachers leaving us. And we will be able to comfortably absorb these positions without class sizes being negatively impacted, as you'll see on the next slide. On the non-certified side, we have restructured our math support center to be staffed by our own certified math teachers, reducing the need for a full-time tutor, which is actually listed in the budget under reading. We've also restructured our college and career center after both of our wonderful women retired in the last year, which will now include a full-time secretary and a part-time certified school counselor dedicated to the career center. Finally, due to a schedule change in TAP, we are reducing the 10-hour per week paraeducator from their program. We have very few additions this year, as you can see with our individual budget coming in at just 1.12%. The one equipment request can be found on page 113, melody chimes for our unified music class. Our wonderful choral teacher and special education students and partners have joined together to create another unified offering at NHS, and it's simply fabulous. It would put an instant smile on your face. We developed this course well after the budget process last year, and the purchasing of these chimes would enhance the students' access to instruments. The large bulk of our increase can be found in the area of contracted services. The 5 platforms that you see listed here are all new additions that our teachers have used throughout the pandemic and would like to continue to use regardless of our learning model. One of the positive things that came out of this situation was allowing teachers to investigate updated technology and resources available through all departments. You'll find Swank and Cami under the English budget. Swank is a licensure program that allows students to view films and movies, while Cami is an online annotating program. This year, our math department piloted a program called Math Excel, not to be confused with IXL. After using it since the beginning of the year, our teachers feel that this additional math resource is particularly helpful to our lower level and struggling math students. Pear Deck is widely used through the school, but you will find it listed under contracted services in the library section. Pear Deck allows for teachers to create interactive slides and presentations. Finally, the Ed Advanced Capstone platform, listed under the classroom contracted services, is a new purchase that will be our master hub for all student capstone projects. In the area of science staff training, Gizmos is a program for virtual science labs, which has been hugely helpful this year as we've reduced students working together and sharing equipment, but understand how critically important labs are for student development in the area of science. I would like to briefly explain what appears to be a $20,000 ice hockey addition in our athletics section. Please note that this amount of $20,000 was agreed upon 3 years ago and has not changed. What has changed is where the money will come from. Previously, this was paid out of student pay to participate money, and we're proposing to move it into the budget. In exchange, you can see on page 127 that we've increased our transportation offset give back from $45,000 to $56,000, which will come from the pay to participate money. As previously mentioned, a driving factor in our budget this year was to ensure and maintain appropriate class sizes. This slide shows the minimal change in average class size with the proposed reductions in the areas of science, social studies, and technology education. Although we can never be sure of our exact class sizes until the course requests are submitted, you can see that the overall number of students will be reduced, which ultimately leaves class sizes very similar to where they are this year. Although we will be reducing tech ed by 0.5, we plan to absorb those classes into another one of our certified tech ed teachers, so we will not be losing any elective offerings. As a final note on class sizes, due to COVID and social distancing, it's important to note that we spent a lot of time over the summer reducing class sizes, particularly in the area of sciences where rooms are very restrictive. Although we're optimistic for the start of school next year to be in a much more normal fashion, it's important to have some flexibility in this area with our average class sizes. That concludes my budget presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Right, are there any board member questions? I don't know, it looks like the high school is just presentation and you're done. No,
You got 2 people.
I know, I'm joking. All right, Mr. D'Elia. And then we'll go to Ms. Zukowski after that. And then I didn't see it. Was there another hand?
First of all, that was an excellent presentation. Thank you, Dr. Longabuco. Very well done. And I appreciate it. I have a question about gizmos, because I know a little bit about it, and I don't know if you might have to follow up with me, but if we go to back to full-time in school, hopefully, will we still need the gizmos in your opinion?
I do think so. I think that there are labs available on there that we don't typically have access to, particularly in our area of human anatomy and AP biology. So I do think that they would still use it. I can't say that it would be as readily used as it is in every science level now, but after speaking to Chris Canfield, I do think that some of our classes, particularly in the area of biology, would still be interested in using gizmos.
So you anticipate using it regardless. I'm sorry, may I continue?
Yeah, if this is on the same line, sure.
So you anticipate using it regardless of if we're in or out?
I do.
For lack of a better word. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and then I think Ms. Zukowski was next.
So one of the things I learned as part of the Newtown Middle School schedule change was that the high school has co-taught classes too. And those co-taught classes, I would think would be small in terms of number of students per class, so that everything would run as well as possible. Are we all set with having those kids in those classes be managed properly? The number of teachers, what are the class sizes in those classes typically relative to non-co-taught classes?
Sure. So typically in our CP level, which is the level in which we co-teach, we always try to keep that level smaller than our honors and our AP level. And so typically it's right around 20 students, if not slightly under. And then we try to maintain the 50% special education and 50% regular education for the co-taught balance to make sure that it is truthfully a co-taught experience.
And the regular education are being well served, and the special education are being well served within those co-taught classes?
Yes, they are. I think we have some pretty strong partnerships that have been in place for several years now between our content area teachers and our special education teachers. And the more we can keep them together year after year, the more they're able to balance their dynamic and really kind of work on putting forward the absolute best curriculum for the students.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Any other questions from board members? Yes, Mr. D'Elia.
Maybe, I don't know. I think this might be for Anne or for Kim, Dr. Longbrook, I'm sorry. Or Mrs. Zuberti. Are we early in capstones? We are early, right? We're doing it before the state requires it, right?
That's correct. So it's required starting with the class of 2023. So we're 2 years in advance, but we also have our students starting the process as sophomores. So our 2023 kids are actually starting it in their sophomore counselor workshop this year, and next year they'll do it in junior advisory, and then they'll take the senior capstone class in their graduating year.
And was the participation rate high for the senior class this year? It was every kid or almost every student, I shouldn't say kid, student doing it?
Actually, every student is doing it. Even our special education students. Paula and I spoke at length and decided that they could too do a capstone, because that's the beauty of the project, is that it can be individualized to anybody's needs. And so we currently do not have a single student who is exempt from the capstone project.
Thank you. I think it's exceptional, and I'm actually experienced it this year. Blown away by it, and I just want to commend you on it, and keep doing what you're doing. It's really, and it's inspiring for the children, for the students, and it's going to really help them figure out their path, which is just, I'm watching it firsthand actually. So congratulations on that success. Thank you.
And Ms. Zukowski?
I'd like to build on that. I had the absolute honor of being able to join one of the classrooms, and I was searching for another. I mean, I just loved it so much. I wanted to find another one to go and drop in on, but of course it's very late in the cycle. So I hope that you make the list of capstones for the next semester available to us a little earlier so we can plan better. But it was absolutely delightful and just really awe-inspiring. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. And there's 226 more, so there'll be plenty more opportunities for you coming up in May.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Board members? Yes, Mr. Delia.
This is back to the question of student population. Have we seen an uptick in high school population as well with the people coming to town, people moving into town?
Not really, not really. We're actually projected to be down about 45 students from last year. And we've remained pretty steady this year. We've had a little bit of reduction in people leaving and moving, but we anticipate being right around the projected 45 students down for next year.
And that's at about 1,500 kids, correct? Give or take?
So this year's 1,441 currently.
So, okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Boros?
Michelle, yes, I have one for Kim. Kim, do you have any information you can share with us on the number of children coming from 8th grade into 9th grade that are going to other schools, other private schools or whatever? Offhand, do you know what that number is?
I don't, and I don't think that enrollment process is done yet. I think it's a little early in the year to know that for incoming 9th graders.
Do you have any idea what it has been in the past?
I do not. I could certainly find out for you.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Board members? You see Mr. Memley here is I need to give him a chance to say something. Hi, Mr. Memley. Thank you for being here.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to reiterate, I think there's 4 or 5 people who already said it, but I'm going to say it again. I would be remiss if I did not thank Dr. Rodrigue for her support, Dr. Longabuco, and the entire board for your support. Like everyone else, we're just taking it day by day and trying to do what we can on the athletic end, but we felt very supported and we were able to do a lot, as much as we possibly could, to continue to give our kids, an athletic experience going back to the fall and now starting up to the winter. So thanks to all of you, and I hope everyone's doing well. That's really all I got.
All right, great. Thank you. We're good. Glad to see you. And it looks like maybe you're at school because the winter season is beginning and you're there late.
Yeah, we have a lot going on. We got started on Tuesday, and
Yeah.
Dr. Longabuco, myself, Natalie are here. Historically, there's been any questions that come my way, but tonight's been great. So thank you all for all of that.
All right. So do we have any other questions about high school before we move on? I don't sense any more questions. So that'll bring us to our curriculum budget. So Ms. Uberti, do you have something you'd like to present? Do you have?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think you can. Let me know if not.
Looks like I can, you're right. Okay, do you have it?
Yes.
All right, great. Last but not least, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here to present the highlights of the 21-22 curriculum and staff development budget. I too want to thank our incredible staff, including teachers, support staff, paraprofessionals, and our administrators, who, in spite of all that has been heaped on their plates due to the pandemic, have continued to revise and develop curriculum, plan and deliver professional development for colleagues, and participate in district-wide curriculum committees. Because of their dedication, not only has instruction continued at a high level, but we continue to move forward as a district rather than stagnate because of all that has happened. It's truly an honor for me to work alongside and support the true professionals in the Newtown Public Schools. Despite the obvious impact of the pandemic on curriculum and instruction, as well as on staff development, the goals of my budget should and hopefully do remain focused on developing rigorous and relevant curriculum and providing our staff with professional development and training to implement that curriculum effectively. This includes building our staff's capacity for assessing student progress, as well as providing effective intervention for students needing additional support. In looking at my budget, you'll notice that unlike a typical school budget, where funding often remains flat within the lines, the curriculum budget has increases and decreases all over the place. And this is because each year the needs of the staff and students should evolve. And I feel that if I'm doing my job effectively, my budget should reflect those changing needs. Those needs are determined through a variety of channels, the exchange of ideas that take place through the curriculum development committees, conversations with individuals and small groups of teachers, dialogue with the curriculum and instruction subcommittee of the board, feedback from parents and students, consultations with administrators, firsthand observations of students' classroom experience, new initiatives resulting from state and federal mandates, as well as unanticipated conditions that impact the delivery of education, such as the current pandemic. If I am doing my job well, I am constantly gathering information over the course of a year that will develop what steps are needed and how they should be prioritized. And that is how my budget should be built. While there may be years that anticipated expenses are level, in this particular year, the priorities appropriately differ greatly from the priorities presented last year at this time. My budget is broken down into 4 sections: staff and curriculum development, contracted services, staff training, and textbooks. I will now touch briefly on each to highlight the requests and leave time for questions. Staff curriculum and development contains line items dedicated to the cost of curriculum development, coordinators who assist with training and support of teachers, district level curriculum and planning committees, as well as funding for staff who provide training or mentoring to their colleagues. Also included in this section of the budget are contractual payments for teachers participating in training outside of the regular school day or in the summer. In addition, I have been including funds here to help our elementary principals offer summer planning time for their school leadership teams. This is something that they have not been able to fully fund out of their school budgets and is partially offset in mine. Staff training deals specifically with training provided by outside consultants or conferences. For the past few years, we have been managing TEAM, our new teacher education and support program, through a homegrown Google site developed by our team coordinator. However, beginning next year, the state is requiring that all districts manage this through their TEAM hub, and there's a fee for that. Our K-5 teachers will be implementing a new math program, and the cost of the training is included in the program, which you'll see in a moment. That will be the K-5 focus for professional development next year. At Reed, this will include half of the 5th grade teachers. So I have planned some training for the other half that will focus on differentiation through the lens of the depth of knowledge, which will help teachers differentiate while ensuring that students are engaged in rigorous learning. This will be customized at the Newtown Middle School to help shape and support the new co-taught special education model that will be introduced. Mr. Picaro has been exploring the way services in district are provided to our English learners, which is another growing population. Because of his attention to this segment of our student population, it has become apparent that more support is needed. With a recently new hire, a new ELL teacher in district, we believe it is extremely important to provide her with the support she needs, as well as to provide training to build the capacity of our teachers who provide the daily instruction to those students. Finally, this section of the budget includes funding for our 2 professional development committees and our district-wide professional learning community, our DPLC days, the district-wide early dismissal days. Moving on to contracted services, you will find our annual costs for Rubicon Atlas, NWA MAP, DIBELS, and our virtual high school seats. This section of the budget is relatively unchanged from last year. Some of the changes to contracted services are related to resources that were put in place last year in order to provide continuity of instruction through the use of digital resources. As was mentioned earlier by Deb and by Kim, it is important to note that these resources were selected because they are high quality resources, some of which were already in place in some schools and grades in the district, but not others. And some of the other resources are staples in other high performing districts. In their own way, each of these resources fills a need that has been identified regardless of whether we are teaching remotely or in person. They have been embraced by our teachers and have been integrated into their daily instruction. So we are supporting continuation of these resources moving forward. As I mentioned earlier, we are planning to implement a new math program next year in grades K through 5, which represents a large investment for the district. We are currently piloting 2 programs, each of which has an estimated total cost of approximately $200,000. That includes all materials, including textbooks and training, intervention materials, as well as a 6-year contract for all online resources related to the program to support both teaching and learning. If you recall, I had included $70,000 in my current budget and have earmarked another 30, which was allocated for other expenses that have not been possible due to the pandemic. So I am requesting the remaining $100,000 be funded in next year's budget. Additional resources in the textbooks line include science kits to support hands-on instruction at grades 6 through 8, Western civilization textbooks to support the newly adopted curriculum, and additional books to support our FLES program. And by the way, I noticed there is a typo. It is not Spanish Books for Less. That is FLES, which is the foreign language at the elementary school program. And Mystery Science, that is the primary resource for our elementary science curriculum. With regards to textbooks and contracted services that support instruction, I have been working to develop a long-term plan that will help us track when digital resources are expiring and when textbooks should be reviewed for replacement. That was something that was not in place when I took over in this role, but it is under construction right now. These are typically big ticket items, and we do need to plan ahead to ensure that multiple items do not hit the budget in the same year, and also to ensure that we are getting the best pricing when possible by locking into multi-year contracts. And finally, some other areas of note, oops, let me change the slide, I'm sorry, are some reductions in my budget. The K-6 FLES teachers have been moved to the school budgets. In that line remains the ELL teacher who does report to my office. So I think that is the appropriate placement for that role. Our paraeducators, in my budget previously was payment for 2 professional development days that has been absorbed into the para salary line. I had a large sum of money in last year's professional development plan to cover for substitutes because we had planned on a great deal of embedded PD, which unfortunately did not happen this year. And our PD plan is going to look different next year, so we don't have the need for that many substitutes for teachers. Staff training is reduced because the primary training for K-5 will be related to their new math program, and that is included in the purchase of the resource. We had also planned for attendance to a national science conference this year, and that won't be happening next year. I will be limiting conferences to attendance at 2 local conferences due to the uncertainties of how conferences will look next year. There was money reduced from supplies. That line had been funding science supplies at the elementary, and they now have all of the supplies that they need moving forward. They are replenishing out of the school budgets. And lastly, there was a reduction in memberships because there was some duplication of memberships that were in my budget and that were also in the school budget. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
All right. Are there any board member questions? There's one. Ms. Zukowski.
Just to know, make sure I understand, you know, we're going into this time now where instruction, you can get it from textbooks, you can get it from digital online resources. And so the whole concept of a textbook, there are textbooks that have digital resources associated with them. So that whole concept is now merging into one thing. And it's just a question of the business model. So you have detail for contracted services. Are these all annual costs, or are they like every year we're going to be for Lexia is going to be 46,500, or is this a multi-year license that we're getting Lexia for? I mean, so the whole concept of what's annual versus what's multi-year is getting confused because of this merging that we're having at this point.
So all of those items under contracted services are annual renewals. And IXL, hold on, no, I'm sorry, Lexia, we do have a 3-year contract with Lexia, and this is the 2nd year of a 3-year contract. All of the others are right now 1-year contracts.
Okay, and these prices, these expenses we see are for 1 year. Lexia would be correct. 1 year of a 3-year contract.
Right.
Okay.
The math resource will be a 6-year contract.
Yes.
Those contracted services, under contracted services are, they're not associated with the textbook. For many years now, even with the programs that we have at middle school, Reed, and the elementary, all of those do provide actual textbooks as well as an online component. Okay, and that will be the same moving forward. The students will have textbooks available as well as the digital version.
Okay, and those things would end up in details for textbooks then. So continuing on with this, is the intent that every digital online source would be, other than special education, would eventually be accounted for in curriculum, or or would it be moved back to the schools that if it's school specific? So we saw, for example, that there are online digital resources in the high school budget. So as far as moving forward, is the plan to bring them all here or to move them to the schools?
So that's a good question. You know, historically, they have been spread out. Certainly at the high school, it's not only by school, but it gets more complicated because sometimes there are services that are for a department. And they're probably more appropriately placed in the high school budget. The ones that are in my budget tend to go across grades. Some of them do extend into the high school. Some of them include special education teachers, but all of them are multi-level. So Lexia is a K-8 program. So it is in all of those schools. IXL for math and language arts actually goes K-12. Not every student in the high school is utilizing it. It goes by licenses, but we have several hundred licenses at the high school. Some teachers are using it. Several of our special education teachers are using it. So I think the broader ones are appropriate to be placed in my budget. Something like Seesaw, which is really utilized by K1, that might be a discussion next year. Is that something more appropriate to move back into the elementary budget? It's challenging in elementary because Frank and I have actually been trying to consolidate, because what we have found is that if one school picks up something at the elementary, there's a few problems with that. That means that other students in the same grade in another school may not have access to the same resource, but also they may not be getting the best pricing based on the licensing. So there's a lot of conversation, and I feel pretty comfortable that wherever it is in the budget, we do know who is doing what. So there's a lot more coordination than there has been.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? Yes, Ms. Harriman Stites.
I know we've talked about, I think at the board level, but definitely in our peak equity and diversity subgroup about an equity audit on the curriculum and what that might look like. And I do know that there are, outside contracted services that can assist districts in that process, because it can definitely, could be your entire job, Ms. Uberti. It's a huge undertaking. So I'm just wondering if that was looked at as a possible addition to the budget this year, or if not, what we could do to support that process going forward, because I think there definitely is a need to look at the curriculum in that way, with that lens. And there's definitely a lot of, public support of doing that as well.
Absolutely, and that has been discussed. I actually had money in my budget for that. Some of that money has been shifted over to Dr. Rodriguez's budget. We feel that we are waiting for the new position to be filled, because we think that person would be integral to that process. And it is a process. We have a lot of curriculum. So it would have to be something that we develop a plan for. And I feel that we have committees in place. And I think along with that person, we can achieve the goal of doing that with a lot of what's already in the budget.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Just following up on that, on the equity piece and how to do an equity audit through curriculum. I just think about how much my 7 years on the board, and how much curriculum we've gotten through in my 7 years, and how much more there is to go. And how it is, we have a huge amount of curriculum in this district, and it would be a large undertaking, as you indicated, Ms. Harriman Stites, that it would be a full-time job almost. But yeah,
there's certainly areas that we can prioritize in. That there's areas that naturally lend themselves to looking at first, and we are fully committed to doing that.
Yeah, it is definitely an important that we remain focused on that. All right, any other questions? Mr. D'Elia?
Mr. Uberti, didn't we have curriculum written for math at Reed Intermediate School? Was it in the last year or two that was presented to the board, or am I misunderstanding?
Yes, we do have curriculum.
And now we're going, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Curriculum is different than a program. The program should support the curriculum. So this is a program, a resource.
Bridges is very, my understanding of Bridges is it's very, it has a lot. And so are we doing a Bridges program, or are we doing our curriculum and supplementing it with Bridges?
So you are right. A lot of these programs are written to be standalone curriculum. And we will be looking at that when we are looking at it as we're bringing in the programs. The feedback, I would recommend perhaps taking a few minutes to watch Frank's presentation to CNI about where we are with the piloting of the programs. But I do think that the area that we're seeing the most impact, where I think we were lacking in our current curriculum and our instruction, is in the application of the mathematical practices. I think we do a good job teaching the skills, but the thought process, the problem solving, the analysis, the introduction of novel problems that students have never seen, where they have to take what they've learned and apply it. That's uncomfortable uncomfortable waters for teachers to go in. And I think these programs push that. So I wouldn't say that it's not aligned to the curriculum we've written, because our curriculum is Common Core aligned, as is this. But I do think it's going to flesh out some of the areas that we need improvement in.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There any other questions?
I should also just add briefly, both of these programs do emphasize the conceptual lens. And that was part of the reason they were selected. So that not only are they in line with the Common Core, but they're also in line with our notion of teaching to the concepts.
And I'm trying to remember the cost of each of, was there a big discrepancy in the cost between the two programs, or were they fairly?
You know, they're roughly the same, because their pricing structures are very different. So one program includes some things that the other program doesn't, such as intervention materials. So when you add them both up, they both come in around $200,000. There's not a great deal of difference.
All right. Any other board member questions? I don't think so. I think that's it. So I think that brings to a close what we have on the agenda for this evening. I don't know if you wanted to add anything, Dr. Rodriguez, before we finish up.
No, I just wanted to say thank you to my outstanding administrative team. They did a wonderful job this evening. Thank you.
And I would like to reiterate what several board members have said throughout this meeting, and just thank everybody here and all the staff that you're working with in terms of what you've been dealing with this COVID year. And it's just been unusual, and we very much appreciate all that you've been working with, in addition to bringing us your budget presentations, which I know is just an additional thing, but we very much appreciate all that you're doing this year. It's tremendous. So that being said, I think we'll ask if there's any public participation. And if there is anybody who would like to address the board at this time, you can unmute your phone with *6. I'm sorry, it was pointed out to me earlier that the folks that are watching on the live stream are not able to comment, and I should probably make a point somewhere towards the end of the meeting that you can call in if you have a comment for public comment period. But I didn't do that. So is there anybody who'd like to address the board at this time? You can unmute yourself with *6. All right, I'm sensing none. So we'll close out public participation and I will entertain the motion for the evening. Would anybody like to?
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All right, Mr. Kusan makes the motion to adjourn. Ms. Harriman Stites seconds it. All those in favor? Aye. And Mr. Voros, are you in favor of adjourning? Yes, he's in favor. All right. It's unanimous. We're adjourning. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Good night.